Welcome everybody to the Masterclass on CX Management. Very nice to have you all here. We have a very interesting day for you, and yeah, I'm very looking forward to taking you through all the steps. And so what are we going to do today? First of all, well, we're going to, of course, introduce ourselves a little bit, but before we get there, just to give you an idea of what we'll be doing today, is we're going to go through a few exercises. Basically, first going to introduce you to, why and what is CX management when we're talking about it. Then we're going to have some exercises and some demos. So first of all, we're going to use a CX management tool, TheyDo, of which, of course, we have Jochem here. And we're going to see how can you create your first journey. It's going to be very interactive. And so you'll be able to get like a real feel for how a tool like that works. Then we're going to look at the journey framework. So, how can you connect different journeys to one another in a tool like TheyDo? Lastly, also, how can you then, when you have all those journeys, how can you define opportunities and prioritize them? Then there's another break, and then lastly, of course, CX management tools don't make themselves work. You need some kind of maturity. You need people that are able to do it. You need a process for getting customer insights, etc. So lastly, we'll finish off with getting you started on how to, take your steps towards becoming mature when it comes to customer-centric ways of working. So basically, there's three parts to today. Understanding why, that's what we're going to start with now. What is it? How does TheyDo support a customer-centric way of working? And what are the benefits of using a tool like that? And practicing the process, like I said, with a few exercises and demos. And lastly, how does it fit in your organization? And how can you maybe implement a tool like this? So all related to our main goal for today, which is to kickstart your CX management. But before we do this, let's first get to know each other a little bit. Well, you've already been sharing all your names in the chat. Very good to see that we have such a nice and diverse group of people here. Let's start. I will start with myself. So my name is Kaspar. I've been working at Koos service design for 4.5 years now. And Koos is an Amsterdam-based consultancy with, we are, I think now 45 people, maybe even 50. It's growing really fast. We also have a smaller office in Lisbon, and what we do is that we help create clients to create products and services that people love to use, and we also help them to become more customer-centric. And my background, as with many of my colleagues, is in industrial design engineering at the TU Delft, and the Master Strategic Product Design, where you really focus on, how can we strategically move business models. How can we become more mature as a customer-centric organization? Those are the kind of questions that you think about. And I'm also not just here by myself. I'm also here with Joris and Jochem. Maybe let's start off with Joris, because he's basically has pretty much the same profile as me. So go ahead.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Joris Hens. I'm a service design consultant at Koos, and basically have the same background as Kaspar regarding studies. I worked as a product owner before joining Koos, and now currently also collaborating a lot with Kaspar about CX management. And then I would like to give the floor to Jochem.
Yeah, sure, thanks. We'll keep it short and brief. I'll be talking to you later today. I'm one of the co-founders at TheyDo, and we create tools and solutions for teams to work across departments, because you will learn and probably have experience in your organization that while the customer journey obviously also goes straight through a lot of virtual walls, a lot of organizations today are still organized in silos, or at least verticals with their own KPIs and goals. Previously, we ran a consulting business like Koos, where we transformed organizations from the inside, helping teams to deliver a customer-centric process, but also help them achieve their goals. And we saw that from, every team, small or large, and every type of organization, the journey is the only thing that ties the business together. And there was no solution to do journey management at scale. So we built TheyDo for that reason. And today we're going to show you how it gets done. By the way, one thing, if you have any issues with signing up, creating an account, or checking a TheyDo for this workshop, Roemer is in the chat, also from TheyDo. So if you have a question, reach out to him. If you don't have an account, do it now. There's a few more minutes to set it up before we do the first exercise. So if you have any questions, you can go to him. So pleased to meet you, and I hope you will enjoy today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jochem and Joris. And why are we here together? Well, of course, TheyDo is very good at providing CX overview in one place, which is essential if you want to become more customer-centric and want to scale that way of working, which is, of course, as I mentioned before, already one of the things that we help companies with. So basically, our interests are very much aligned. And that's, yeah, I think we started our partnership pretty much 1 year ago. And yeah, it's been very interesting to go on this journey. We've done more of these masterclasses and talks. And yeah, we very much think that this partnership is going to be very interesting already now, and of course also in the future, while companies become more and more customer-centric. So we've already done this a little bit. So we've seen that there's people from all over the world. Maybe one thing to add as well is some expectations for the masterclass. What do you hope to gain from it? Because then we can maybe keep that in mind while we talk about the different topics, and that we can really give you the types of insights that you are looking for. So feel free to share that in the chat as well. And
if you haven't done it yet, state your name, your company, where you're from,
yeah,
and your expectations. And we'll make sure we can address most of them.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll just keep going, and then later on we can have a look what comes out of that. Because let's start with why, why do you want a tool like CX management, and why do you want this way of working? So let's start from the basics. Customer experience, of course, is a combination of all the thoughts, the emotions, and the perceptions that customers have when they interact with an organization. And of course, you have a lot of different touch points where that happens. The flyers, a help desk, the product itself, a website, all those things are different touch points where you create some kind of experience, and that experience together forms the total experience that a customer has. And of course, in the perfect world, the customer loves the interaction at every point of this journey, at every touch point that you have. However, in reality, what happens is that it's often very unclear what actually happens at these touch points. And that's because in organizations, everyone often uses different KPIs. There's maybe different journeys. You might not even know what are all the journeys that customers can go on. There's different initiatives that are being undertaken to improve the customer experience, but nobody really has the one single overview of what is happening all the time. So everyone is working on CX and trying to get overview of these touch points and what's happening and how to improve it, but it doesn't happen in one place. And in a different way to visualize this is like this. So for example, you have marketing that uses a dashboard. You have sales that uses some spreadsheets, but they're all not connected. They're not really talking to each other. There might be even departments that don't have any data at all, and they just go by gut feel. So what you end up with is different departments and teams that don't speak the same language, don't agree on what's happening with the customer experience, and don't really know what's already being done or what others are working on. So it becomes harder to actually coordinate projects and collaborate effectively. Well, one very important tool that has been used to create a little bit more clarity on this, of course, are customer journeys. And really, customer journeys are great. However, the problem with journeys is that once you try to scale a customer-centric way of working, it becomes a bit harder to keep using journeys because, for example, some questions that we get from clients a lot when we make journeys is like, okay, very nice that you created this journey and you created some insight into, how these touch points are being experienced, but how are we going to keep this journey up to date when we change something, for example? Or how about the other journeys that customers experience? How does this journey connect to those journeys? Or how are we already working on a specific opportunity, for example, that we identified, and who is responsible for what? So these are questions that you start running into when you try to scale a customer-centric way of working. And just physical posters, as we've been doing for years now, are simply not cutting it once you start scaling it. And the result is basically threefold. First of all, you run into a situation where there's just confusion about CX. For example, where does a journey start or end? Or what formats do we use? You know, how are we reporting on the journeys or personas or all the customer insights that we have? What terminology do we use? You know, does everyone in the organization know who the personas, for example, are that we're working for? Or does the sales department use completely different personas from the marketing department, or etc. Secondly, it becomes much harder to coordinate projects because there's no clear insight or understanding between all the people in the organization what the biggest pain points are, for example, that you're working on, or what the opportunities are that we're collectively working on, or how to connect all these things to the backlog, or who is responsible for what. So these things become much harder to coordinate when there's not one place where all these things are stored, and when there's one understanding shared between everyone on what these things are. Lastly, it also leads to double work because, you know, where do you capture your insights? You know, team A might have some spreadsheets, team B might have some dashboards, and nobody really has the full picture of what's happening. Becomes even more complicated when you have quantitative data and qualitative data all stored somewhere else. So you don't know what's happening, and you don't know who has the information. So what happens a lot is that, you know, for example, research is done double because people are just not aware of what's already being known about the customers. Or people might find out later in the process that they've just been working on the same kind of solution because they weren't aware that someone else was already working on it. And lastly, of course, if you just rely on reports and posters, etc., they just lose their relevance after a while because, yeah, nobody's keeping them up to date. And that's, of course, a waste of good research. So confusion about CX, ineffective project coordination, and double work are some of the things that you run into when you don't have a single source of truth to store all the insights that you have on customer experience and that you use to manage all the opportunities, etc. So if you want to scale, you need a better way to capture all these insights and manage those CX efforts. Luckily, of course, we have TheyDo and similar tools. And what TheyDo does really well is that it basically allows you to digitize all these different things in one place, starting with customer journeys, for example. You can map all the insights that you have, then connect them to each other in a journey framework, zoom in and out as needed, so you can have the full overview or be able to zoom into a specific part of the customer experience, basically whatever you need. And lastly, you're also able to define improvements, opportunities, and connect them to the places in your customer experience where they will have an impact, which will really help you to then also prioritize them based on your strategic goals. In short, what TheyDo does really well is that it basically allows you to digitize your full double diamond. Please, if I'm just assuming that everyone knows what a double diamond is. If you're not familiar with it, feel free to have it to post that in the chat. Basically, the double diamond is just one model that explains how the customer-centric way of working works. So it really starts with ongoing discovery, then defining the key problems or opportunities that you want to work on. And then, of course, prototyping, creating these solutions and testing and validating them again with customers. And what TheyDo basically has done is that it's created one single source of truth to store all of the output of this whole process in one place. So you're able to store all your journeys and personas online in one place. You're then able to define all the key opportunities with those journeys and the personas. And lastly, you're able to, to note down what solutions you're working on and even connect those to the backlog. And what that means for you is three things. First of all, it creates much more clarity across the organization. So it makes the customer experience much more accessible to everyone. Because there's just one place where you store everything, it becomes much easier to find insights. Even if maybe you're not the person who did the research, someone from different departments might be able to actually find what you've been working on to get some more insights. So it's also a very good tool to bridge silos. And of course, because there's one place that you store everything, it helps in a great deal to standardize the terminology that you use. You know, what personas we have, what steps in the journey that you have. You're all speaking the same language, which makes it much more easy to then collaborate. Secondly, it becomes much more easy to coordinate projects effectively, because you're able to identify the key pain points, identify the opportunities, and prioritize those according to your business goals. It becomes much easier to say, you know, which projects will have the biggest positive impact on our customer experience. Also, because you're not just doing it for one journey, you're looking at really the whole customer ecosystem, all the journeys that customers might go through. And you're really being able to, with that bird's eye perspective, to pinpoint, you know, where should we really focus first when we, you know, spend our budget for improving customer experience. So basically your projects are going to have a much bigger impact if you're able to do that. And lastly, prevents double work, because you don't lose valuable insights because they become irrelevant or they just become lost. And there's always one place where everyone knows this is where the last updated version of our insight into customer experience is. So nobody, yeah, you don't have the problem anymore where someone else is doing research, and yeah, you might be doing the same thing. So I'm handing it over to Jochem right now to speak a little bit more about, yeah, the benefits that TheyDo offers you when you want to scale this way of working.
Nice, Kaspar, thanks. Did my screen swap work? Did anyone notice something? No, yeah, no, I haven't, right? Yeah. Okay, so I just want to start and add one more bit of context to why now and what is happening in the world, what we see, and then I'll tie it back into journey management, because Ingrid also asked a question about, you know, prioritization in Jira and the product-driven tools out there. What we see today is the rise of the experience-led organization. You know, customer experience back in the days, even for a lot of us before we even were professionals, you know, design thinking, creating customer-centric workflows or results was actually the domain of the boardroom. It was done by IDEO and those kind of companies. But with the rise of the product-led organization, the product focus came and experience became the domain of product and the user experience design teams. But now with the explosion of the focus on customer experience, we see now the journey-led operation or the journey-led organization emerge, where journeys are basically overarching all the different projects, products, teams, and silos, where everyone has a place in to support the customer experience. So that changes the equation and that makes for an experience-driven workflow. So that is where we are today. And what we see, and I'll just give you a quick overview of what we're talking about, because theoretically, this is what we see, but I will give you some hands-on experience in what we will experiment with in this masterclass. So if you are able to go for an experience-driven operation or to be focusing on customer experience as an organization, then journeys are the only thing that tie the business together. And you really want to go from mapping, flatland, to management, where there is a dynamic system of record where everyone has a place in. So you create standardization across verticals and a single system of record. So that will allow you to create decision-making frameworks to make it easy and fast for everyone to organize around opportunities, not just pain points in this journey or that journey, but really to align on the opportunities. And that is the core of, you know, what the design thinking mindset is about, is finding the problem before you find the solution. And by doing that, a lot of backlogs today, Ingrid, I'll be answering your question about why shouldn't we focus it in Jira, for instance, where we have a backlog or sprint planning. That's feature-based, it's solution-based. But first you want to address the opportunity and then figure out, okay, what goes into our backlog? What is a product-focused solution that we might propose? And what is actually something else that we need to do in the process and the progress of our teams or maybe in something in communication or marketing that we need to adjust to support this journey. So ultimately, having a single source of truth and also a workflow packed to it is different than what we see in product management. Product management, there's a solution, there's an app, there's a system, there's a website that you can go to, you can tinker with it, you can experience it. And then there's the management part where you have tools like Jira, where there's your roadmap, your backlog, your features, and the sprints and the tasks that everyone is working around. So workflow and truth are separated. Well, you have staging, obviously, and you have the dev environment, but in general, they're separated. With journey management and CX management, we see this world collide into one place where there's the truth, because journeys make the intangible tangible, visualizing also the parts that are before and after your product or service touches the customer experience or the interaction with your customer. And on the other hand, you want to have a workflow from insight to implementation. You want to use the journeys to track progress and see who's working on what. So basically, I'm going to take you through TheyDo quickly to give you a bird's eye overview of what we're talking about, and then we'll go into the exercises. All right, so once you have a journey management system set up, I'm now looking through the eyes of a company that is like a telco, a telecom provider. I think a mobile subscription provider of any sort. This is a customer experience, like the whole life cycle made up of customer journeys in TheyDo, and teams have the ability to manage these journeys and to make these overviews. Not obviously everyone, but mostly, more importantly, it's up to the team admins to set that structure, and we'll talk about it later this workshop. So if you have this whole life cycle made out of journeys, you can start building a governance structure around it. But I'll just take you through some of the basic aspects of journey management, because we're mapping. Here you see a journey map with the phases of buying a mobile subscription and the different steps that our customers go through. Here you would see the experience visualized through the eyes of 3 different personas, all with a completely different experience in the different steps of the journey, which is easy to manage or maybe filter around on. And this way you can capture actually the entire customer experience, maybe visualized as one journey, or like I just showed you, trickle it down into different journeys, so that you can actually get a sense of what's going on, who is having what experience where. So this is what journey mapping is about. But then what you want to do is go one level deeper and figure out like, okay, so what are maybe the solutions that we already have in place to support this journey? So maybe this is the user experience on the website you have, or the front stage of your application. And what are the channels that people typically interact with us? So building these layers below your journey will help you to basically create databases of your solutions, of your opportunities, of your journey steps as a lattice work of customer experience. But what makes TheyDo unique and what makes this workflow work is that you can prioritize opportunities. So let's say I'm going to this comparison site as a customer, and I have like this information overload. So teams are able to document this as an opportunity and show that in this particular step, there is the problem of having an information overload. But as you can see, it's already documented in different journeys. We know that there's different steps that also customers experience the information overload problem across the experience in different journeys. So making it easy to connect it allows you to create opportunities and take them outside of the journeys. And that is what we're going to experiment with a little bit today. I'm not going to show you all the bells and whistles, but basically, if you add a value score for what does it do for our customer and a business if we address this, what it allows you to do is prioritize across the experience. So TheyDo takes all these opportunities from all your journeys and puts them into the context of what you're actually trying to solve. Let's say you have an OKR on conversion. You can assign these opportunities to that specific goal. And then here you would see, like, based on the customer and the business value, the information overload is also relative in size, the biggest opportunity we want to address. Or you can look at the whole ecosystem where there's a lot of opportunities that we want to address. So it gives you information so you can talk to your stakeholders, your teams, like, what do we need to address? And then talk about what are the solutions that we need to put in place to actually make it work. And that's where the product teams get back in, the delivery teams, where you want to align on what features in the roadmap you actually want to do, or maybe communication solutions you have thought about but never thought on implementing. And you can basically do the innovation light tracking here, where you align all your solution initiatives across the business in line with the opportunities that are tied to your journeys. So that, in a sense, is journey management today, and we're going to talk about it, how it actually gets structured. All right, so to maximize your overview capacity, you need a great process. That's the standardization you want, but also skilled people in the right mindset. And we're going to talk about that today. But first, this was a little bit of our intro, giving you a sense of what we're going to talk about. You even saw TheyDo already. There were some comments in the chat, but this is the part where we address some of your first questions today, so we can make the rest of the masterclass fit and meet your expectations. So let's see if there are some questions. If you have a question, put them in the chat. We'll see if we can address them. By the way, Ingrid, I don't know, did we answer your question kind of already a little bit based on the end question you asked about privatization? Yes, no, you can say thumbs up or not. Put it in the chat. Marina Brooks, will there be a recording available? Yes, there will, and we will share it afterwards. Everything is recorded. Anyone else have a question before we continue? Good. Christian, is there an offline version, way to store the gained data outside TheyDo? Of course, traditional PDF export, so you can put it back on the wall and stand across it. That's one of the options. We're exploring more export functionalities like CSV export. So yeah, if you need those things outside TheyDo, sure. But inviting your colleagues, working together in a system of record that is secure and private is what we see the typical workflow here. But you can also create share links to just create a unique URL to share a single journey outside. So there's different options for different purposes. And about the scalability, Isabel, how scalable is the solution, how multiple journeys can interact, connect. We'll touch base on some of the aspects later today, but I don't want to hijack the beautiful agenda from Joris and Kaspar. So we'll see how far we can get in explaining that. And if you have more questions, we can catch up after this session as well. Hope that answers this question for now. All right.
Perfect. I'd say let's continue then. Yeah.
All right. So what we actually want to do is talk about a scalable approach to journey management, and it ties into how scalable is the solution. So there we go, Isabel. There we get some first answers to that question. And we want to actually start with a little exercise so you can get some experience. So as we already mentioned, and we know everyone has created TheyDo accounts. If you have issues logging in, creating an account, which I assume no one has, Roemer is still here, so you can reach out to him. But we are going to do 3 things today. Back to the framework. So we're going to make our first journey. We're going to do an exercise to get a sense of the journey framework, and we're going to give you the option to create your first opportunity and start prioritizing and see how that works for you. But the meat and bones of this workshop and masterclass starts with making and structuring your insights into a journey. And we're going to do that today. And in your workspace, when you log in, when you've created your organization, you will see that there are some sample personas there already. You can change them, you can tweak them, but there's one thing that is very important, is that TheyDo and journey management, and in the context of CX management, we see that need-based profiles or personas are one of the key ingredients to good journey. So who is having this journey? And we can talk about segmentation and profile setting maybe in another time, but what is very essential is that you use a typical persona for your customer journey today. You can use the sample personas, butcher them, recreate them, use different faces, photos, or create a new one. But your journey will have a persona, will need a persona, because he or she will be the one that is having the experience, where you can capture that. So what we're going to do today is set up the basics for your first journey in TheyDo. So you have the first steps done, and then we're going to build it out as we go. So in TheyDo today, we are going to do this as a breakout room. Joris, are the breakout rooms ready? Yes? Okay, good. So what we actually want you to do, we ask you to bring a journey or multiple journeys if you have some. Maybe they're in Excel, maybe they're in a whiteboard like Miro, or you have them drawn out in a PowerPoint or in your hands, or you have an idea in your head, also fine. The coming 15 minutes, you will start creating your first journey. So you would go to TheyDo, and I will show you quickly how it's done. So then you can follow along and then you can do it yourself. In your journey management system, you will be able to create a new journey. Basically going to journeys, create new, and I suggest that you can start from scratch, but I suggest for today, you just use the simple customer journey template. You can give your journey a name. So what is the goal of your customer, or what does he or she wants to achieve, or what do they want to achieve? Or maybe it's like onboarding, for instance. You can set the owner later on relevant, so it's to you. And what type is it? Is it a current or future journey? You can set these settings. Pick the personas that are relevant to this journey, and then off you go. Here you would land on the basic journey, and this is the place where you can start creating your actual customer journey. That's for the coming 15 minutes, the task at hand. There you see some phases, and you can add steps, add multiple steps in a phase, drag them around. So basically creating your journey outline of what a customer goes through when, for instance, onboarding in this case. So there's maybe before, or you want to rename the phases into something very specific to your business. Those are the things you can do. And then once you have the outline of the phases and the steps, then you can start thinking about the experience your customers have. So what do they in each of these steps experience? Do they actually do something, have a feeling, or maybe they skip the steps, so you leave it blank? And then set actually their experience in the journey. So basically, this is where you can capture, based on the data you have, based on the journey map you have, how different personas interact in this journey. You can start with 1, 2, 3, 10 personas, however you want to do it. So that will be the first exercise today. Later on, we'll go into opportunities, solutions, different lanes of your journey. You would see here a few already. Maybe nice if you are able to do that in 15 minutes, that you add a few customer quotes on each step that you've gathered in your research, or you know are about the pain points or the delightful moments they have. So coming 15 minutes, we'll use breakout rooms for you to set up your journey. And then you would actually enter a journey map, create the phases, create the steps, add a persona, and then start mapping out the actual basics of your customer journey. If you have any questions, you can come back here, ask us. We'll help you along the way, but hopefully it is intuitive and straightforward, so you can set up your first journey for this part of the masterclass. All good? All right, then I suggest we start with the breakout rooms, and everyone can start making their own journey. By the way, one thing before we do that, Joris, sorry. If you are together, I know some people are with 2 or maybe 3 people from a company. It is real-time collaboration, so you can collaborate in the journeys together, but someone needs to create it and then everyone needs to join it so that you don't create 2 of the same journeys at the same time. Maybe an obvious one, but just wanted to mention that.
I think we can already have some people just explain how was it and what are your first thoughts after playing around with TheyDo a little bit. And feel free to speak up or just drop it in the chat. And then we'll, let's discuss a little bit. Very curious.
I got some questions on journey framework, like how to organize that and how things can get linked, like higher order journeys, sub journeys, micro journeys. We will touch base on that. So if you have some questions around that, we'll answer that later in this masterclass. Another question I had, very specific one I can share from a group that was about blueprinting, how you connect your internal processes to the journey. Very good question. We just mapped the basic customer journey or client journey or patient journey, if you will, depending on the organization you have. But now that you have that frame in place, then you can start layering on the lanes that are relevant to this journey. So one of the lanes can be the internal process or the front stage processes you have in place. And you can use basically the databases in TheyDo, like the solutions database, to identify those and say, on this particular step, a specific process gets initiated, started, or is touching the customer experience. So adding those as lanes into your journey, or use the blueprint template, that's also something that we have, or create a blueprint template your own, are some of the ways that we see teams do this. Now, if you want to know more of that, maybe today is not the right forum, but feel free to reach out after this workshop to me to answer or to get some more idea on how to actually do this.
Any other questions, perhaps?
Share some experience. Want to point out someone, Kaspar?
Let me see. Well, I'm just gonna point at a random person. For example, Judith. How was it for you?
Oh, it was very good. I did it already before I got the invite yesterday, and we already started. So no, I think it's. No, I really like the tool. Normally we do it on a physical level, but I think it's on this online level. It's very interesting, and I'm very curious how we can actually go further than with the management.
Fantastic.
Cool. Great to hear. What about Leopoldo? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm on mute. I was on mute. But no, it's really cool, really intuitive, very easy to spot where is what. And I really liked how when you add new columns, everything just adjusts pretty seamlessly. And then how you actually visualize the mood depending on the personas, that was also quite nice.
Great to hear.
See a question from Brittany, or maybe a comment, and this was something that I noticed in other groups as well. So the discussion, like we do this in Miro, some of you might also do that, or maybe Mural or some other virtual whiteboard. What we just did was basically laying out your first journey map, right? So that is something that you can do in a lot of tools. So what we will experience later, and what this masterclass is also about, is not only mapping, but more like the management aspect of how do you create this framework of journeys. How do you go about keeping them up to date, create a governance structure around them, but also use the opportunities to create like a layer on top of it, so you can really start managing on customer and business goals rather than just on journey map specific. And that is where we see unstructured work, discovery work still needs to happen in this free form Miro or Mural or wherever in the physical workshop, hopefully again for a lot of us. But once you go into structure and scale, that is where you need tools to help you do that, management tools, that is. So that's where the difference between mapping and management is very clear. And this part of the masterclass till now was more about mapping your first journey. So quite some similarities to maybe your workflow you have already experienced. So hope that clarifies a little bit what we will be talking about next.
Yeah. Maybe. Oh, this is pinned. Yeah, no, I experienced the same. Like, of course, I've made countless customer journeys, also during lockdown, just digitally. And what we see is that we always, to cluster all the phases, for example, that you talk to 10 people, then you have to do some clustering to end up with your phases, with your important pain points, etc. We do that stuff in Miro because it's just very nice to make quick post-its, to put them together, etc., just to arrive at this sort of first overview of your journey. But then that is kind of the point where you want to go into TheyDo and really connect it and share it with the rest of the organization. So instead of that, we then make it into a poster, we just put it into TheyDo and we present it using that. That's basically how we use it. So maybe, I guess, are there any other questions or remarks? Because if not, then I would say let's go on with the next part.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, good one. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, in what person should your persona be written in? Is it third person, first person? Do I say I am happy, or the persona is happy that? Or is there no rule?
Nice. Yeah, give a nice answer on that. Both are fine. It totally depends on the culture in your organization. We typically say I. So you really want to step into the shoes of your customer, your persona, or the one that is experiencing this part of a customer journey. So in that sense, I is a little bit more relatable.
Great, thank you.
Maybe a last interesting question in the chat. Can you export from Miro to TheyDo, Jochem?
Yeah, working on that, importing actually. So you import from Miro to TheyDo, different content, post-its, lanes. Basically, we're creating a unified inbox for insights. So not only Miro, but also your customer feedback tools, your even email can land into your journey. And then you as a journey manager can drag and drop it into the different stages and steps of your journey. That is some of the things that we are working on right now. Today, it's still a little bit of a manual process, but it won't take long anymore.
Yeah, maybe a word for me. Maybe I'm speaking before my place, Jochem here, but I just think it's very cool to see that you're integrating with more and more systems. So you now have like an integration with Jira. You're thinking about integrations with Miro, so that it really becomes this, very connected piece in between the whole ecosystem of different digital tools that people are using to, get more insight on customer experience, but on the other side, of course, also connect to development teams, etc. So
absolutely, yeah. It's
yeah.
one of the things that well, I'll share it later, Kaspar. Sorry.
Yeah, of course, we're gonna get there for sure. All right, so let's continue because the next part is about journey frameworks. Of course, now we've all created our first single journey, but as you all might be well aware of, every product or service probably has a whole range of different journeys that customers experience. So something that CX management and TheyDo allows you to do is to actually have an overview of all these different journeys and really connect them. So where does one begin? Where does the other end? Really from the first moment that a customer interacts with your, with the first onboarding or maybe just the first awareness even, up until someone maybe says goodbye to your service. So really throughout the whole customer lifecycle. And just to illustrate this point, this is a little interactive exercise where we want you to name some journeys, regarding your mobile phone subscription, and just name any journey that might pop into your head, just to get a little overview of like how many journeys a service like this already has. So just let's ideate together a little bit. Just what are possible journeys? Yeah, there we go. So pay my monthly bill. Check if my price is still competitive, upgrade, switch from personal to business account, get a new phone. Any other? Yeah, repair the phone, exactly, yeah. Refer to a friend or a family member, interesting, yeah. Order a travel card, buy more data, boarding and mobile number. Okay, well, it's becoming a nice tsunami of different services and different journeys. So yeah, I mean, we only spend like 1 minute basically coming up with different ones. Cancel subscription, there you go, yeah. So you can imagine probably in real life there might be, I don't know, 30, maybe 40 journeys that are a part of this service. So it quickly becomes, just imagine that for every journey there's a different team working on it and they're not actually talking to each other. It becomes really blurry, like where does the responsibility of one team begin and the other team end? How do all these journeys fit together? Who is going to update all of that? If you have 30 journeys, how are you going to keep all of that up to date? So that really makes it even more clear why just having all that stuff in one place is such a powerful tool to have to work more effectively and efficiently together, especially if you start scaling this up across multiple teams with multiple journeys, etc. So that's what the journey framework is all about. And TheyDo allows you to create this high overview of all the different journeys, as Jochem already showed a little bit in the demo in the beginning. But you even have like different zoom levels is what you get to. So if you zoom out all the way, you see your whole life cycle from beginning to end with all the journeys that are a part of it. But if you click on one of the journeys, it opens up and basically you can zoom in and zoom out just regarding what you want to know at that time. And TheyDo offers a lot of flexibility when it comes to this. So you can have like your full ecosystem, but then you have journey boards, you have the journey circular. If you want to zoom in a little bit more, you can have your journeys in a linear view, and you can even have your journeys in a step view if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty details. So there's different zoom levels that you have. And here to give us a little more introduction to that concept. Yeah, I'm going to hand it over to Jochem and show us how it's done.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is like, I'll show you, but since you already have created your first journey, you're in TheyDo, you can actually click along and experiment with it a little bit if you want. But if you want to just watch, that's also fine. Because besides having, looked at these mobile subscription journeys that we have, we probably end up with 20, 30 journeys that all add up to a single customer experience for different personas looking from the business. What else is important to know is that what are you doing with these journeys? So one is actually capturing an actual experience and showing where you actually fit into your customer's life from your product or service perspective. But the other one is taking the organization by the hand and helping them understand different aspects of customer experience. So management maps is a concept that I'll briefly touch on. Like maybe you want to create like this higher order maps that just have some basic idea of the total customer experience. And then the details are in a specific journey. I'm just going to show you a few examples. And again, you can click along or just check out my screen that you get a sense of what we see is typically working in complex organizations. And I'll do it again in this overview of the telco provider that we have. And this was something I touched upon earlier. This would be like the higher over customer lifecycle expressed in a few stages. So this is what we call a journey board, where you can actually use from the journey database. Again, we have like 31 different journeys in this whole ecosystem, all with a different purpose. So that is what TheyDo allows you to do. So journeys get treated individually, but creating a framework, puzzling them together, linking them together is where it really gets meaningful for you as an organization. So here we would see a customer lifecycle example based out of the customer's experience. So from passive looking to renew or create a new subscription to active looking, becoming a customer, onboarding, being a customer, and maybe renewing or canceling like we just saw. So what you actually want to do is define what is the right level of overview. I'm sorry, I'm going to go out. What is the right level of overview of presenting this first level of information? Because you can also go one level up, say, okay, let's just create a simple management map that covers the end-to-end customer experience in a few steps. Just align on what the opportunities are, what are the top insights we have, and maybe some of the solutions that we have in place to address it. Again, I'm in the same map that you saw earlier. Like this is a very broad journey map, because as you saw in the chat, there's like 30 micro journeys supporting this customer experience. As you will see here, for instance, another example you would see in going to this comparison site, already pointed out that we know there's this opportunity of information overload to address, but maybe, as the team did here, they added a lane called subjourneys. And here they would say there is a specific comparison journey that we actually track on a very detailed level. So here the team has created on this specific step a link to the online comparison journey. And if I would now go into it, I don't know, it's not less fancy than the other one. If I now go into it, I'd see the full detailed picture of how people go about comparing their mobile subscription together with their friends. Or just go back to the higher order journey and then be back at the comparison site. So this is another way where you can create like a journey map and then a sub journey level below it, or even maybe a micro level below it. So adding another journey lane with, let's say, micro journeys. So creating this grid work framework of journeys is pretty flexible, and you can just pull from the journey database any journey you would like to organize in this specific lane. So that is another way, a level deeper, to organize your journeys and to really create some sense out of it. By the way, for complex organizations, again, viewers, if you just have stakeholders that view, I close the edit mode, they can just view. So they can see what's going on, click and dive into it, but they cannot tamper with the data. What we saw happening in Miro is that stakeholders join and then, they mess up your artboards. Don't want to do that. So it's easy for you to grant access to the right people. Same for, in this case, the customer lifecycle. Just as an admin, you can lock it, so no one can change or edit, but they can view and access the journey information. So you always get a sense of overview and you can work together with your teams. So creating this framework is a very specific exercise to your business, and we allow you with the different tools we have to create this overview different ways. And last but not least is the management view. This is what TheyDo got famous for, actually, is the circular view. I'll zoom in a little bit. This is actually the same journey, end-to-end customer journey, as a circular journey, where all the steps are laid out here. And you can really zoom in onto a specific step. So the trigger to start looking, what is maybe a storyboard, the opportunities, the persona actions, all the way down to the different channels people use. And then skip through it step by step to take your stakeholders along, for instance, in this particular journey, or drag them around. It's a nice interactive thing when you're in edit mode. So these are very different levels of connecting journeys and showing journeys together. And it's up to you and the organization to really make it work. And there's not one size fits all. So we made it so flexible that you can create all these levels. One more thing, it's nice to see different journeys can end up in different boards. So I can also create a board that says, hey, what is currently in research? So which journeys are we working on or researching? So this is a research journey. But later on, maybe it can also be ended up in the life cycle. So you can reuse them and create these different overviews that make sense to you as a business. All right, so you probably don't have as many journeys already in your journey management system, but for those who clicked along, curious what do you think, and for others, let's see what the experience is like. I know I was going fast, but that's the downside of this masterclass. We don't have a lot of time. If you want to know more, let me know. But this is basically what we see organizations puzzle together to create this framework so that they finally have one place that is the overview and can provide a detailed picture of what they want to do and what to achieve next. All right, were there some questions on the chat while I was chatting along?
Yeah, there were two actually. The first one was from Isabel. The question was, can we include some survey data in some key steps? And then I suppose she means that it's straight from the survey software. That's the question.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, so that was, yeah, nice. Thanks, Isabel, confirm. So that was one of the things that we're doing right now. And I'm going to bring it into here and then everyone can see it quickly. So just to also see what's coming. I don't know, this is not really a product demo, but anyway, I'll do it. So TheyDo is allowing for the first time to have this end-to-end workflow based on journeys. So from insight to implementation. The next step, integrate all the tools you already use. Miro is mentioned, Gyro is mentioned, but also Typeform, SurveyMonkey. We're talking to Momentum and Usabilla right now to really integrate those services and to fill the journeys with these insights and then use the opportunities, maybe even auto-suggestion opportunities. So we bring these two worlds together, from collecting the data and realigning the delivery teams around the journeys. And that is actually where we see journey management in the context of customer experience management really helps organizations do. So if you want to get your survey data in there, let me know, and we can talk about what the tools are you use, and then we can see the integrations. I don't know if that was a good answer. Download the journey. Top right corner of your journey is a button that says export to PDF, so then you can include them in your presentations if you want. That was a question from Nathabeleng. I hope I get that right. There we go. Okay, so third part, opportunity management. And this is where really journey management kicks in when you want to manage customer experience at scale in your organization. So it's the third part of actually getting there. So we experimented with creating a journey, doing a little journey exercise, and then showing how it can tie together. And sure, your minds are now racing, like, what is the framework for our organization and how can we get it done? But if you have these two things in place, even on a small scale, you don't need to have it perfectly aligned yet. Then you can really start surfacing these opportunities that we just saw. And if you do that in this way, then it's consistent. It has context of the journeys, and you can start comparing apples and apples across departments, across teams, across products and services. So just a quick question, and you can answer in the chat. How do you currently prioritize opportunities in relation to the customer experience? So what do you currently do? You can name anything, like doing Miro, have team chats, we have a framework, we have a scorecard, we just look at the data. What do you guys do? You put your answers in the chat. I'm curious how you currently do it. Yeah, So it seems like a measurement framework, retention, acquisition, strategic value. Scoring framework from Ingrid. Anyone else?
Benefit effort, yeah. We use that one a lot as well. And of course, these are the the types of frameworks that you can use to make these decisions. But are they also used by everyone in the organization? And is there like, do different teams have the same place, for example, where everyone knows, okay, these are the opportunities that we're working on as a company? Or like, how do you communicate about things like that? I think that's also quite interesting. So not just what are the criteria, but what's really the process, and is everyone following the same process when it comes to prioritizing?
Yeah.
And also feel free to take the stage for a little bit. I think, like you're more than welcome to speak up or just explain a little bit how it works for you.
Manon, you want to explain the benefit effort matrix, how you use that?
Yeah, sure. So what we try to do is for all the initiatives, try to plot them on a graph with two axes. One represents the effort that it takes to implement it, and the other one is the value for the customer that it represents. And then we try to pick first the low-hanging fruit, so the easy ones, which take less effort and bring high value, and then hopefully we will ever get to the more difficult parts. But I think a big downside is that my company loves PowerPoint and I don't. So that managing this and sharing this is not well done at the moment. So that could be facilitated much better, I would say.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so some other ones are collecting. Thanks for sharing, Manon. Thanks. Some other people are sharing about the amount of complaints or issues a call center gets, or low NPS rating. So amount of feedback from customers and the key customers that have issues. So these are also very good indicators. And when we talk about opportunities, it's not only about what happened, right? That's usually a data-driven intention or signal that we see in our dashboards or from, let's say, a call center. But you also want to know why. And that's also what part of good experience management is about, is getting both worlds together and really understanding the context. So I will again show you once more the anatomy of how we see journeys and journey management work and why opportunities play a key part in this. I'll tie it into what Manon says about putting a grid on it and skipping PowerPoint, hopefully, but we'll get to that. Because ultimately, if you have all your journeys mapped, and what you actually can do then is based on the qualitative data you have, based on the actual experience people have in a certain journey. Let's just take one journey as an example. Maybe even the solutions that you have in place on this journey or the processes in your blueprint that we touched on earlier in the masterclass. Then you can layer on this opportunity layer and start documenting what actually you want to address from a qualitative standpoint, from an insight perspective, maybe from your user research perspective, like what are the opportunities that we need to address? This is customer-centric thinking, but we also want to address it from the business part, and that's where it gets interesting. So Manon, you will be happy with the matrix here. We're going to show you how it works based on effort and a value score in a second. But first, again, you have your journeys already. Maybe you've created already an opportunity. Are there people who created already an opportunity, tried making that? Can I see some thumbs for the ones who did? Some thumbs up for the ones who did. And if you didn't, it's also fine. And we're going to do it. Yeah, see, Aline has done it. Nice. Some other people, yeah, I know that have done this in the masterclass already. So you can click along again using your own TheyDo environment, and I'm going to show you how the workflow typically looks like and how the prioritization works, so you can get a sense. And I'll tie it into some of the questions you have asked around this. Ready? Good. Okay. Back to the overview again. So I'll just take this journey again, journey, and I'm going to show you. So this is also about a little bit of the workflow you have and the process that you have, but what we typically see in organizations that start to align around journeys is that there's a lot of different teams working on different journeys. So you want to give them the tools to actually surface these opportunities. And that is the information overload is a known, but we're going to create a new one. So here, in any journey, opportunities can surface, but it can also be that there is already an existing opportunity that surfaces on a specific step. Different use case, I'll get to that later. Let's just create one. You can click along, and then you'll see why it's important to create it and how you can then later on use it outside your journeys. That's where the stakeholder discussion comes back. So let's say I'm going to create an opportunity on a specific step. I'm going to create a new opportunity called CXM opportunity for today. So now what I did actually is created an opportunity in when a customer goes to the online store. I know there's this problem we want to address. So this is the opportunity. And here you actually want to capture what actually is the reason that this is an opportunity. So why? So here you can give a short description. Just a quick tip for the design thinkers among us, just use the how might we ... notation. So that you're thinking problems still, not in solutions. So how might we solve the CXM opportunity so that we can, make our customers happy? This is where you describe the opportunity. So you can immediately also set an owner so that someone knows, hey, Jochem is on it. If I want to know more about it, I can reach out to him so I know where to find him. But basically what we also do is we help you to address a basic value score. Now, if you have a fancy scorecard in place that already has a few drivers, you can use that. What we typically see, you have a customer value expressing like, if we address this opportunity, what does it deliver roughly for the customer? But equally, you want to give that perspective on the business. So what does it generate for the business? Maybe there's a very low priority for the business, or maybe a very high priority for the business to address this opportunity. So these are, the basic information that go into an opportunity. Now, of course, it's backed by research and the context is in the journeys. But if you start creating it like this, then you will see here, okay, so it's now linked to this specific step. Because it's documented now, you can start adding it to different steps in the experience and linking it. As we saw with the information overload, that was linked with different steps and different journeys. And that will create this knowledge of work and linked opportunity management. The last step, if you have ideas on what to do about it, the solutions that you want to implement or the ideas you have, you can either, pulling from what has already been done. Again, the double work part was very important to address. So maybe there are some solutions in place that people are working on, new research that has been done that is related to this, so you can add it, or obviously you can add new CXM idea to your solution, so to your opportunity. So this is basically what you can set up around the opportunity. But what is very important, you can tag it as well to give some more meaning and context to it. But what is very important is that, I'll give it some effort score and show it to you, that this opportunity will travel. So now we've created it, it's now documented, it's now in the system. So maybe it's linked to other journeys, you can do that later. But it will end up here. This is the opportunity overview. So here we would have all the opportunities in our ecosystem. Now you can imagine some of our customers have hundreds of these opportunities generated. Some organizations even have 100 journeys and then even more opportunities, so you can get a big database. So then what you can do and what we see teams do is start assigning them against your business goals. So here we would have, if you work with OKRs or OGSMs or different goal setting framework for your teams, you can start listing these goals, basically creating sections. So create a new section, and then here we would have a section around the objective for this quarter around conversion. This is a very general example, but you'll get the hang of it. And then you can start assigning opportunities to the specific topic that you want to address. So here we'd see, I would go and find the CXM opportunity, assign it to my OKR conversion goal. And then now I've clustered them, so it adds up. So there's a few more here. But what it does, Manon, you will like this, is based on all the opportunities in this specific topic, we can then generate this matrix and say, okay, based on customer and business value on the axis, X and Y axis, what are the things that we should address? And the size determines how much impact it has on the specific journeys or how much research you actually have based on the steps it's related to. Here you'd see CXM up, very high customer value, business value, but not many insights connected to it yet. Or, and you saw me add the effort score here, that is based on what are all the work we need to do to put the solutions in place to address the opportunity, pretty high effort in this case, can also rank it based on that. So here you would have the effort on the y-axis and the combined value score on the x-axis. So that will give you some slices of information you can really nicely screenshot and put in your PowerPoint or just share your screen. And to talk to engineering, to talk to your stakeholders, to talk to the business, to talk to data, to really get a sense of, hey, this is what we try to achieve. This is what we actually have linked to all our journey management and to our journeys. So these are the opportunities that we want to address. And then you shift the conversation from talking about solutions all the way to which problems for which customer and what business unit are we going to address. So basically outlining how actually opportunity management provides the surface layer on top of journeys. So you don't need to talk endlessly with every stakeholder about all the journeys, but you can basically filter, summarize, and really show them what actually opportunities are about. And that is what we see is the real innovation to scale this up in organizations, is to start aligning on opportunities. All right, so that was a little bit of how you can do it in TheyDo. I know some of you have clicked along. Why is this important? And this is a little bit the strategic thinking that journey management and experience management has in the organization. Is actually a typical organization prioritizes still a lot on gut feel. But what we see now, when you have your opportunities that are part of your journey ecosystem, you can shift that from opportunity that are gut feel based to really make them about facts. Not only data, but really about the qualitative validation you have with your customers. So strategy got broken down into your goals, whatever framework you use. And then we actually help you to align the delivery teams all the way at the bottom and initiatives they might endeavor have in the roadmap, for instance, with these opportunities. Again, opportunities are linked to these journeys in your journey framework. They are the place where you surface what actually your customer and your business needs. And then you can have the discussion, what is more important this time around? Maybe sometimes you do prioritize something business centric, that's fine. But at least you have taken the customer into perspective. And then you would actually see this is where they get placed into your strategy, your strategic framework. Now, this is an oversimplified version of a company. I wish the world was as simple as this, but it will give you a basic understanding that with journey management, you can actually, when you talk about delivering a great customer experience, you can insert these opportunities as a layer between strategy and execution so that you are really set up for success as an organization and not just as a team, but start aligning across different teams because you have a new currency to compare, and that is the opportunity. All right, so we'll share the slides after. I know this is maybe a little bit, a lot of information to take in, because you also need to figure out how you want to do it for your organization. But layering the opportunities on top of the journeys and taking them outside and then start to align the rest of the organization with the insights you have is a very useful method, very effective method we see organizations take to start scaling around the experience. All right, so do you have some more questions? I think Isabel had a question. What was there on customer support? Was that related to the demo, Isabel? Can you elaborate?
Feel free to just say it as well. Yeah, it's probably easier.
Yeah, it was on the demo, just before this part. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So on support, I mean, you mean here on customer support? Yeah. So this was another section. So here we have customer support, and then there are some opportunities assigned to the customer support bucket. So this is basically the organization want to have, like, what are the strategic priorities we have, or what are the goals we want to achieve, or maybe the buckets we want to organize for opportunities in. And then here are some examples of opportunities that ended up in the customer support bucket.
I was expecting to be some kind of integration with all the inputs that we have from our customer support teams.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're working on. So bringing in the voice of the customer, really topic analysis, and then start looking at, okay, which journeys they fit in. So you also have the quantitative evidence. And that for TheyDo is the next step what we're building towards. So yeah, I expect that too. So we will accommodate those. What kind of tools do you use, Isabel, for that?
Very legacy. We don't have an optimized tool to centralize all the data that we have from the chat and the phone. So we have internal data, it's banking, so compliant world.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that a lot. So maybe that's also what we see, especially in banking. We see teams that start with getting the top line insights and then starting to align these opportunities in the journey so that you actually have a start. And then as the legacy systems get better at new systems and get in place of the legacy systems, then maybe you can start thinking about integrating. Is there some other question? Thanks, Isabel, for clarifying. Is there another question someone has?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't follow. How can I address the opportunity to the OKR? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's basically a little handling. So you create a new section, and then in all the opportunities, let's see, you have the pricey bills, and then you can assign it, add it to section. You can assign it to the section and it gets added. And you can have one opportunity that is maybe something for new, for the OKR, and also for customer support. So you can add, again, many relations here as well.
Okay,
is that clear?
Yes, that's it.
All right, let's continue. So thanks, Jochem, for showing, of course, all how TheyDo works and how it actually helps to digitize your customer-centered way of working in a sense. Next to, of course, standardizing and centralizing it. However, what we see with these tools is that the CX management platform, such as TheyDo, won't automatically start using itself within the organization. So what this means is that once you start to use it, it doesn't mean that you as an organization work customer-centric straight away, because there are some challenges that you have to tackle for that. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into right now. So we're going to look into how to get started within your organization with CX management and how to scale it. So what we always say is start small, learn fast. So start small to learn and gather proof. Do a pilot with a single team, product or service. And we broke this up into 3 smaller steps. The first one is do a kickoff pilot, do a kickoff with a pilot project. Of course, that's why we're here. Use TheyDo in your pilot project to map all your insights and scale it up across the organization. I'll break it up into some smaller pieces. So step 1 is actually define a first project. Ideally, you find a project that is in the intersection of between these 3 following things. So first, identify the needs. Where can CX management add the most value? So are there any places in your organization where teams are running into problems, having separate journeys, or losing track of the bigger picture of all the CX initiatives that are going on? Of course, second is gather budget. Where in your organization are people that might be able to sponsor or support a tool like this? Not only a tool, but of course also the people that have to start doing this, which comes to the next point, gather a team. So what people or team is the furthest ahead in terms of working customer-centric, which people are familiar with it. Where can you gather people to build the journeys? Think of UXers or service designers or maybe journey owners if some organizations have those. So that's a very good starting point to start working customer-centric management way of working. Step 2 is, of course, like I just said, start using TheyDo. Won't dive into this much any deeper because Jochem did it elaborately already. And then third, checks before scaling up. After running a successful pilot, it's time to think about scaling up. So if it's successful in this team, of course, you want to scale up across departments and other teams, because that's, of course, the power of using these type of tools in your organization. So first, build a case. Build a business case, show how TheyDo helped your team to improve the customer experience, but also show how TheyDo helped your team to work more efficiently and consistently, because that's, of course, also a lot to gain in the amount of time spent on discussions, on presentations, on sharing insights, all that double work. That's actually where the business case can be built. Plan your next move. So identify new teams or projects to target next. And also identify possible barriers and make a plan to overcome them. So sit down with your team and think of like what in our organization would obtain us from working this way and try to see if you can tackle those problems or, I don't know, work around them. Third is organize roles and responsibilities. So assign people to certain journeys or opportunities. Next to that, also assign people as an editor or as viewers. So who is really the owner, who's responsible of this piece of customer journey within the larger story, or who is responsible of the opportunity within this journey. And of course, also train the right people. So train people to use TheyDo and adapt a customer-centered way of working. And then lastly, a very important one, if you want to have impact on the longer term, is create a strong CX initiatives. So set CX targets and use them when evaluating projects, teams, or people. Not only doing that, but also make CX part of strategic goals. So create customer-centric KPIs, for example, that really allow you to track over time if what you improve really impacts the customer satisfaction. And good to mention here is that CX management and CX maturity actually go hand in hand. So really take that into account when you start scaling. I'll explain it briefly. At Koos, we have a maturity model, CX maturity model, that highlights 5 steps in the journey to become more customer-centric as an organization. I'll briefly go through them. First, we have the explore phase. So there's not really much awareness around customer-centric way of working, but some people start discovering this way of working. Then you have the proof phase. First, CX projects are being done and used to prove that this way of working is working to improve the customer experience. Then you have the scale phase, where people are convinced, some people are convinced in your organization and are trying to scale this way of working across departments and teams. Then you have the integrate phase, where CX becomes more integrated in all the processes across an organization. And you have the thrive phase, where you become really a CX thought leader in your industry. So what you see here is actually that improving CX maturity requires CX management. It's actually a critical step if you want to go from proving to scale customer-centric way of working across organizations. Or this will also become a barrier to reaching the next stage or the next level. So it's really this in-between step between prove and scale. I think a good example here is that one of our clients is a healthcare company, healthcare insurance company, I must say. And they are already in the proof stage. So we've been working a lot with them. They are very in the proof stage. So they do a lot of CX projects across teams and across departments. And what they see happening is that they lose oversight of all the CX initiatives that are going on in their organization. And they have very hard time managing this to make sure that it's not double work is done before, for example, in those teams. And what we see is that they are currently doing a pilot with TheyDo to see if this tool could help them to create this overview, to create this standardized and centralized way of working for CX, which would enable them to move into the scale phase. On the other hand, implementing CX management also requires a level of CX maturity. You can imagine that an organization that does never heard of customer-centric way of working is really going to successfully implement a CX management way of working. So you also need the right people and resources, the budgets, the skilled people. You also need, of course, the tools and capabilities. So is there a research process in place in your organization? Are there already existing personas or journeys? Of course, there also should be right beliefs and behaviors. So is there openness to experiment and to fail in your organization? Is there a holistic view on CX? Is there also leadership support from the top? Very important. And then the organizational structure and systems, for example, CX-based prioritization. And maybe one step further is metrics and deliverables. So how do we make customer-centric work actionable and measurable across the organization and fuse this into your way of working? Final exercise. Maybe before diving into explaining this exercise, are there any questions about starting and scaling the CX management way of working in your organization? Or are there maybe some experiences from people?
Curious what level of maturity people have. Maybe we can bring up the maturity model again and say like, hey, what do you think where your organization is on the scale, and just put it in the chat. Like, are you on the exploring stage, proof, scale, integrate, or are you already thriving? Where are people?
Exactly.
Where are you, and what is the challenge to move forward?
So put in the chat where you think your organization is. Not your team, because I know there are some very forward-thinking people already today, but really like your organization.
So some actually back from scaling to proving. I'm very curious. What is the reason?
That's very interesting indeed. Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that, Ingrid?
Yes, I can if I figure out how to use Zoom. Yeah, we ran into some obstacles and we asked for help with our management so that they would go, maybe even go into a more integrated approach and more alignment. And I think they were scared of it because CX became too important in a very IT-driven company. So they said we should just quit. And they quit all initiatives that we had for 2 years. So we had a team of design thinking facilitators taking up projects, etc. And the IT integration and implementation was a bit tricky. So we needed more alignment on management level for the resources throughout the entire implementation chain. And they just said, stop all these initiatives, please. So then we were back to some. Then we were back to some individuals.
Yeah.
Now again.
The beliefs and behaviors where the leadership support comes in, which is necessary to like implement the CX management way of working or go to the next stage.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my video, but yes.
Sorry.
So yeah, we felt that was an obstacle, so we wanted to make them explicitly prove their buy-in, and they didn't, so they put us back.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're here, to prove them wrong.
Exactly, I'm still there, so we'll see.
All right. We're going to have some more discussion later on, but what we first have for you is a final exercise. Kaspar, if you could put the link in the chat. We have like a small survey maturity scan, CX management maturity scan. So please, the filling in takes around 5 to 10 minutes, so not that long. So take your time. We're not going to go into breakout rooms. We're just going to stay in this room. And after filling in this survey, we're going to discuss some results that were there. Kaspar shared the link in the chat. So yeah, take around 10 minutes or until 1:15, depends on how fast everyone is. And then we will dive into those answers. Thanks. So the first question or statement that we have here is this. So is your organization ready to start with CX management, and why? If you feel like taking the floor, please unmute. Otherwise, we're going to point to people. So curious what people have to say. It's, of course, addition to the discussion we have just now.
Yeah, and for the people that are still filling in, by the way, just take a little bit more time, and we can already talk maybe with some people that are done. So yeah, if you already filled it in, are you ready? Or what are your thoughts on that? Also, you can drop it in the chat or just take the stage again.
I can jump in. Just a quick thought. Yeah. I think we already started with the CX management, but I don't think we are ready to scale it up and get to the upper level yet, because we still don't have enough resources allocated to do that. And what we do have is very different teams and different projects where we have minimum impacts and several efforts that at some point don't converge. And when I look into a tool like TheyDo, which can be hard to implement in a very compliant company sometimes, but if we do it on a side project, let's call it like this, I believe we can, and then scale it up. I do think it helps to bring everyone to the same page and to clarify all the terms. And what I do see here, the power is, even if you have different teams working on different projects and different journey maps and different personas, at some point they all can collide and centralize and have a single source of truth. That would really help, because nowadays we have a lot of in mirrors and murals, and than on PowerPoints or flow maps, but they get aside. We don't have this macro and micro interaction, which would be great to really get it started for real. And that's my thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Sounds like a good challenge, and maybe this can be useful for you to kickstart that.
Totally, I'm hoping, and I'm doing a lot of screenshots as well. I do know that you are gonna share some recordings, but you have some very good lights in that direction.
All right. Someone else who has an answer to this question or would like to share how their organization is doing, the challenges they face. All right, then I'm gonna point to someone. Regina? You here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, you lost me. Yeah, I think we're ready to start, but I mean, I like the questions you were asking in the test, right? Because it's you see where you need to grow and where we're on our way. You've gained some insights. What would you say?
Yeah, so context. I'm currently doing a project with Regina. So yes, I would definitely say the organization is ready. I see a lot of challenges related to the things we discussed today, as in really creating this overview across departments and teams, really getting a standardized and centralized way of working, like gather all the pain points that we hear from customers. So yeah, I think indeed, like you're between the prove and skill phase in that sense. Yeah.
It was funny because the team pinged me because they see, of course, moments where we're very early in experimentation, but I want to believe we're further down the line.
Yeah. Maybe the next question, Kaspar, also looking at the time. This is maybe related also, maybe you can also get the questions from the survey here, Kaspar, because this was actually one of the last questions, open-ended. So maybe you can share some results and then we can discuss them.
Yes, so I'll zoom in a little bit further. I mean, of course, there's a lot of different questions, but I think there's a few that are maybe interesting to share with you. First of all, just interesting to see what tools you use now. So it seems like most of us are already using online whiteboards like Miro and Mural, etc. PowerPoint is still very popular as well. Yeah, something we really recognize from us as well. Excel is still very popular, but interesting to see that online whiteboards have a high score. CX management tools, sadly, no one really yet. So that's of course why we're here. And also some analytics dashboards like Qualtrics, Medallia, those are also already being used by 40% at least. So interesting. But I think maybe these two questions are the most interesting ones. So first of all, what do we as a group see, are really the benefits? And maybe like the top three is basically to really like standardize this customer-centric way of working, improving collaboration, as we mentioned before as well, and improving this holistic overview. So really having all the data and being able to zoom out and zoom in. It's very interesting to see that those are the ones that are pointed out. And I guess the next thing that's interesting and that I would also be really curious to hear from you more about before we finish it off is the biggest barrier. So integration with an existing way of working is what most of the people answered. Is there maybe someone who can elaborate a little bit on this, like someone who chose this one? And yeah, why is this one of the biggest challenges according to you? I'm not really sure if I can see who.
I can maybe say something about it.
Please, yeah, thank you.
My name is Joseph. I work with Twill and Maersk here in The Hague. I think the biggest thing for me, at least, was that for this to really get picked up, it has to be fully embraced by the product owners, and we have a lot of them, because they're currently the ones in our organization who are kind of responsible for gathering what the opportunities are, what the KPIs are, and setting these things. And so I see some, maybe unwillingness on their part to do this in a new tool versus in Jira or I don't know, the mini PowerPoint presentations that they have. So I don't know, it's just a different tool to do the same thing in many ways, and I like this approach, but I kind of anticipate some pushback to change their whole work process.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe one more person can say something about this, like about integration with an existing way of working. Anyone else who has something interesting to say? Or maybe about the data security issues. It's also interesting to see that as the number 2. Anyone who has some experience with that? I think Jochem probably already knows a lot about that, but.
I'll go.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's mostly because I come from a financial service industry. So obviously people's data is quite a big thing, and having obviously making sure that whatever we integrate into our systems is secure and it doesn't affect people's data. It doesn't give us access to, it doesn't give other people access to the bank's data, which is quite a big thing in terms of risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We see, especially in these kind of environments, that the data security practices are maybe a little bit outdated in some organizations where everything is moving to the cloud and gets digitized. And one of the benefits that is a good counter argument if you really want to scale this up is that in principle journey management is using aggregated data, depersonified, so there's no unique user identifiers in there, which makes it easier. But still, banking and financial services are one of the most regulated industries in what we see. So we also know that vendor onboarding can take up to 6 months. So that is a known thing. But today, most financial institutions are changing the way they operate and scale this up and try to get some cloud solutions in their tech stack to actually make the work for the people more effective. Yeah. That is an ongoing thing.
Very interesting. Well, there's a lot of input from you guys, so we will actually send you a report and with some conclusions from us later on. And just, I'm pretty sure that it's also interesting for you to see, where was the group today on some of these points, and as a reference for yourself as well. So that will be one of the things that we will send you afterwards. And then it's time to wrap up. So please, in the chat, share your biggest takeaway. And what was the most interesting thing that you've heard today? And then while you do that, I'll actually just continue and wrap up our story. Because, of course, we've been talking about the tool itself, but also about maturity. And well, we often see that companies need the most help with, actually the process. So like getting all these insights, maybe training people, and also scaling CXM, for example, based on what you just filled in. Like we often help companies to really take the next step in their customer-centric maturity. So we're always here and we're always interested to share our thoughts and just help you out. So if you have any thoughts or maybe some things that you would like our input on after this workshop, feel free to reach out to us. And we're always happy to think with you on the challenges that you might be facing. And we will send you the results from the survey. And and of course, if you want to have a chat with us or know more, or you have some specific questions that you would like more input in, at any time, feel free to reach out to us. And before we end, I'm just really curious, what were your biggest takeaways? And also, if you have any thoughts on things that you would have liked to hear, or like some things that we could maybe improve in this session today, feel also free to help us out, to let us know that, because you know, every time we do this, we try to do it a little bit better. So if you have some feedback for us, you're more than welcome to drop it. That only helps us to do it better next time. So yeah, what do we have? Like, let's see what you guys answered here. So product-led versus journey-led. What do we have here? It's great to have zoom out and zoom in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can really have it fully holistic or zoom in on exactly those parts that are interesting to you as a team. Could make professional life so much easier. Yeah, great to hear that. Like, I really think that if you have all these things, if you have, you know, designers and these processes in place, this can really, it's like a turbo on your customer-centric way of working. It really just makes everything go much faster, more efficient, more easy. So it's really like a multiplier of the work that you do in that area. Yeah. Some very nice thoughts here from Brittany. I thoroughly enjoyed the tool. Use it in today's session. Yeah, there's maybe some of the rest can also help out to read this, because people are actually sharing whole stories here, which is very nice to see, actually. Yeah, the way it's visualized. Yeah, the circle. Yeah, as Jochem already said, that was one of the things that really set them apart when they integrated that. So
in the top right corner of your journey, you can set the different views for your journey. You can, you know, use the aggregated or different persona views, but you can also switch from linear to circular there. Who was the question, Hodo? I hope that helps you.
Maybe an interesting question from Fabelijn, if I say it correctly. How long are we going to have access to the tool for, Jochem?
Forever. So it's now yours. You can use it. You've used the free version of TheyDo. That's free forever, up to 3 journeys. You can invite your colleagues. If you're serious about starting to really do journey management in your organization, then feel free to reach out. But the data is yours. The environment is yours. It's your tool from now on. So feel free to explore a little bit further after the session.
Nice. So then I would say, let's round it off. Thank you for being here, everyone. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions or some things you want to share your thoughts on. And very nice to have you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kaspar. Thanks, Joris, for having me. It was amazing.
Likewise. Thanks for showing.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yes. Hope to see you around.
Thank you. Bye.